Last minute is slowly ticking by. 11 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order of the Isabella County Board of Commissioners Finance and Administration Committee meeting. We have a quorum here. We'll call the meeting to order and approval of the agenda. We just have one item and a discussion list on invoices. Do a call to the public. There's nobody online probably as usual.
There is not at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I guess we move right on then to our first item of business is consider approving the memorandum of understanding between Johnson Controls Incorporated and Isabella County for a preliminary analysis of facilities to determine the viability of projects for a performance contract and authorize the board chair to sign the same. We turn the floor over to you. Unless you want to do an introduction.
I'll do a brief introduction. John Ingraham from Johnson Controls Incorporated is here to talk to us about the memorandum in front of you with Johnson Controls is to do the preliminary analysis on a handful of our facilities, most of the facilities that make sense. I think the one that we're thinking maybe doesn't make sense. Maybe it does. We're not sure is the building next door, right? It doesn't hurt to take a look at it. So this preliminary analysis of the buildings would determine, do we have any projects that would foot the bill for a performance contracting partnership with JCI? Remember, we talked a little bit about performance contracting at the goal setting session, where it's basically a way to leverage dollars for capital improvements. And John's going to talk about some neat and unique things that are available to us right now as governments that weren't always available to us. And some of those things that we want to do, this is a way of getting a lot more projects done, a way of leveraging our dollars. So take it away, John.
Very well said. I have nothing else to add. Nicole hit it. So I have a presentation on the program of performance contracting. So we'll go through that. And then the steps of which the MOU and the preliminary review is the first step. So getting into some of the slides I put together here. So it's displaying art. So we're trying to get a feel for the amount that the county is spending on utilities. So this is from the budget line items. It's about $600,000, of which the largest spend is corrections, which is very typical within facilities. So just kind of ballpark figures we're looking at with about $600,000 in utility spend. If you could save about 25% of that, it would be $150,000 a year. Over 20 years would be about $3 million. So that's one component of the various savings and funding streams that would go into a project like this. Now, not doing anything at the jail, that number would come down a little bit. Also, the 25% was chosen arbitrarily somewhat based on, some counties and municipalities we get into, it's 20%. You'll see a case study we have here for Eaton County, signed the performance contract in April, and that's projected to save 35%.
So 25 on the average.
Yeah, and that's where it's okay. The first step is there older buildings and facilities in their need? Is there utility spend? So it looks like you've definitely crossed the first hurdle where it would make sense to go on to a preliminary review. People learn a little differently, so I kind of have it three different ways. There was the text way, and then this is kind of in a graph way, and then a table way. This is a super simplified version. As the project develops, you get a 20-year cash flow with various, saving streams, energy saved, operation saved, where the various funding is coming from. But this is basically just shifting a budget line item you already have for gas, electric to DT consumers and water bill. That line item reduces by some amount, say 150, and then you have a new $150,000 a year payment for the upgrades, or whatever those numbers shake out to be.
Or we can do nothing and keep spending it.
Right.
That's also a possibility.
Okay.
Right. Or fix it on our own and just pay for the whole thing.
Yeah, and not leverage it. Right.
So this is a slide summarizing some of the available funds from the Inflation Reduction Act. They've had these programs before in the past, and they were typically as a tax credit, so non-tax paying entity. You basically were left out on this one. This one is different because it is set up so that you are entitled to these funds. The project we're working with other counties are getting in excess of $1 million for solar. So it's if it doesn't generate carbon, then it's available. So that would be solar, batteries, geothermal. Everybody would get 6% as a base. So the entire cost of it is 6%. Does my mouse show up a little bit? And then you get another 24% if you meet prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirements. So that stacks on to bring the total to the domestic content requirement. The hurdle is 40%, and it'll add another 10%. So that would bring the total to 40. And there's some interesting components about that is the domestic content requirement goes up each year. The idea that US manufacturing kind of gear up to meet it. So as you know, time goes on, the domestic content requirement will go higher, which usually drives the cost up a little bit. And then there's another 10% if it's in an energy community, which has not yet been defined. They did define Isabella County as being in an area where unemployment has increased due to the energy industry. So there's a potential for that additional 10%, which would put it at 50. And then there's an environmental justice bonus, and that is something we'd have to dig into too. But we're thinking that 40 to 50% of any kind of solar would be paid for.
So that's reimbursement for installation of solar arrays.
That's
basically,
everything
right?
associated with the solar panels, the design,
The
procurement,
planning.
installation, the startup commissioning, even the interconnect phase. There's some costs that you need to pay to consumers. And you know, we can help you navigate that process, but they need to do a study to make sure everything, you know, downstream and transformers and everything are acceptable for the system being installed.
The production tax credits, as I understand it, are why we have utility scale wind in our county and likely solar coming because of those lucrative tax credits like he's talking about. The governments could never take advantage of until the Inflation Reduction Act. So private developers would develop a wind farm because they got the credits, right? They got the payback. Now governments can do it too. So it's good
It's a
timing,
very big
folks.
change.
It's good timing. Yeah, it's a big change, big opportunity.
You know, one of the other components of the program is looking at how everything interfaces together. You know, before building systems used to be, okay, I got a lighting system, I got, you know, camera system, and they weren't integrated. So by looking at, okay, how can an occupancy sensor shut off the lights and maybe dial back the temperature and looking at it, you know, as a single building system rather than, you know, 10 different components. You know, there's a lot of economies of scale to be had by that. And that's why when we look at a program, we look at just about every component that goes into the functioning of that building, access to our security cameras, as well as energy, building envelope. You know, we'll go into counties and that are miles worth of caulking. And that adds up, you know, modeling that could show for every linear foot, $1 million. That's big.
You need somebody to do the caulking. I have a friend who will do it for free. It's his favorite thing in the whole world.
It is kind of oddly satisfying to like
Good
put a
friend to
bead
have.
I've seen this guy caulk 50 tubes of caulking a day at different projects that he does around the park that he lives in. He just loves caulking. So just to be able to just.
Yeah,
side
no,
by-
I know
I've
Dennis
done a lot of
Bradley tried-
caulking, but that's way down on my list
Yeah.
of favorite things.
I knew a guy that loved doing
Not right
drywall, he loved patching drywall and smoothing it out. Like it was his favorite thing.
The caulking makes a difference.
Yeah.
I tell you, it'll seal the house right up.
Mhm.
So I think I have some more. So the environmental benefits, what, you know, and we follow your objectives on this. So what typically drives these projects is the money savings. So the energy, the operational savings. It's financial sustainability, but that doesn't mean you can't also highlight some of the environmental benefits. You know, some communities are, we want to be net zero, you know, I don't care what it costs, we want to be net zero, other are, we just want to save money. That's primarily the focus of the programs is, well, okay, let's do as much as we can with savings within the existing budgets. And, you know, then we can focus on, you know, whether you want to pay more to be environmentally sustainable. But it is huge in terms of, you know, the impact on the environment and, you know, I've met with Nicole several times now, but what, you know, what sticks out to me is, you know, hear these things, we've reduced 200 tons of carbon, which I don't know how much a ton of carbon or what that looks like. It doesn't really mean anything to me. So we'll put it in terms of, okay, it's, 5,000 cars off the road or planting, 400,000 trees or what have you. So that helps with messaging the community. It shows you're being good financial stewards and with regards to their taxpayer dollars as well as, focus on the environment too. So that's where, some of these things like solar that used to be a break-even proposition, it's like, why bother it? Saves us 50,000 a year and costs 50,000 a year. Well, then if you factor in, well, it also, helps out the environment, and then it's it's enough to say go ahead. And then when you put in the ITC, it's could be saving, it will be a saving most likely. So this is what I talked a little bit earlier. It's pretty obvious when you're missing door sweeps or insulation that it's costing money. So what the program does is a full audit and quantify that. Okay, how many dollars is this costing you? How many dollars would it cost to fix it? And then you have the information to make that payback. So we do this. This is called a facility improvement measure. It would be a building envelope. It'd be one of 50 or 100 that we would look at. We would have cost and savings, and then when you combine those together, some things might have no payback, but are major operational issues like the pneumatic devices that are running a lot of the buildings. That's air. Versus using electronic control and maintaining those systems and finding knowledgeable people to maintain those. So a lot of the times, okay, you're going to save money, and we could quantify that, not having to run the air compressor and the leaks. There's actual energy savings that could pay for some of those upgrades and to switch over to digital. But the real savings there is, finding components and a workforce to maintain that. It's going to be, it is increasingly difficult and soon to be possible. The other side of that is that think of where this entire building is built in the 70s and has really old equipment, is running R22 refrigeration, which was mandated to stop being manufactured. You could still get it, but with no more supply, the cost of that goes up very much. So with newer equipment, you could avoid some of those operational issues to do, costly recharges of public equipment. So it's a focus on the energy and operational savings, and putting together the project that makes the most amount of sense. And part of that is looking at the life of that equipment. We did a project for Eaton County where they had 2 chillers that were nearly identical, but one had failed prematurely. It was replaced and it's only 10 years old. The other one's 20 years old. Well, both will save $15,000 a year, but did it make sense to replace the one that's only 10 years old, even though it saves some money, but it still has at least another 10 years left. So that's part of the evaluation too, is to look at what's old and needs to be replaced anyway, and then use a savings justification to pay for that rather than having to, take as much money from the general fund. Not to say that general fund doesn't supplement it. Some of the savings could be, okay, we had this budget item, $20,000 to replace this boiler. Well, we don't need that anymore. So that's saved up on it because it's replacing the project. Data logging. So what we'll do when we get into a detailed audit is put in data loggers for one for occupancy sensor lights to see when people are coming and going, to know, what potential savings there would be for putting an occupancy sensor in a room. It's in there for a week, see how often it'll sense motion to know when people in there, and it'll sense lighting, knowing lights on. So you can see, how much of the time the lights are on are people actually in the room. And then you would know what that savings would be to see if it would justify putting a motion sensor in that.
Sounds like real 21st century stuff here.
And then LED lights are usually one that's really quick payback. That's been done at several of the buildings, but we'd like to do a full audit to see, exterior lights or something. People overlook quite a bit because they're hard to get. So I always get the easy ones. And then also, I want to point out this is, sometimes energy use goes up. If you see, a building that has some equipment that's not working properly, and in the winter it can never get over 64 degrees. Well, when that's corrected, it might take a little more energy. So the idea is, it's a focus on safety first. You need proper lighting, you need proper air exchanges. One of the greatest measures you can take for the mitigation of COVID, flu, cold, anything is to bringing in fresh air. And, there's code requirements for the amount of air exchanges that are required in any given hour. But if it's, 30 degrees out and you're bringing in fresh air that air needs to be heated, so that decreases it. So it's finding a balance of getting the fresh air and comfort, the temperature and humidity and the energy efficiency. So and in this example, it's swinging from the 60s to the 80s over the course of a week or two. Probably could benefit from having a little tighter control, which may or may not save money depending on. Where they
Yeah,
fall.
I think COVID has given us all a increased sense of indoor air quality concerns for air quality.
And that's potentially where, some ARPA dollars could be used for this, because that is a strong focus and this is making sure you're getting proper air exchanges and control. And that would fall within one of the 4 allowable buckets of ARPA dollars for a COVID mitigation.
Mhm.
So that could, supplement some of this. And we figure out, okay, we got 4 million worth of energy savings and 6 million worth of need. The energy savings are great, but more often the amount of need and facilities will exceed, what the energy savings could pay for. So back to solar electric generation again. So part of what this program does is guarantee, I kind of glossed over that, guarantee that the cost of
Actually, I
construction.
wrote that down and be like, could you focus a little more on that savings guarantee for us, John?
Yeah, so a key component that differentiates the performance contracting versus a regular design build model is a performance guarantee. So if take the solar, for example, we can't guarantee the amount of sun you're gonna have in a given time, but over the course of the year with decades of data, we could guarantee a certain amount of electrical generation based on the systems and the available sunlight. So the guarantee would say, okay, we guarantee you're gonna save, X dollars. Well, it actually says you're gonna save X kilowatt hours, and rates applied to that. And each year we come back and we measure and verify. It's through international measurement verification protocols, so it's all standard calculations. That's usually part of the development of the project. It goes into the contract. So this is our plan to measure and verify, and it's just the formulas that'll be used. And if there's a shortfall, if we say you're going to save 200,000 a year, and you save 150,000, then we write you a check each year for the 50,000. Or fix it. We would rather put in more efficiency saving measures for the 50 grand rather than write a check every year for 20 years.
As would we. if we're
Right,
serious about
exactly.
that.
Benefits both.
Yeah.
Correct.
There's usually not a shortfall. We're usually pretty good at coming close, but less than 1% of the time we'll occasionally get a shortfall.
Less than 1%. That's pretty good
Mhm.
forecasting calculation. Okay.
Well, they got some motivation to
Oh,
get
yeah.
it right.
It's kind of hard to write that check sometimes.
And and one of the things also to point out is, the solar panels, they've changed a lot in a building like this, which has a lot of open space and it's a flat roof and a new roof, which is important because you don't want to put a bunch of solar equipment on a roof that needs to be replaced in 10 years and you
Right.
take it all down. So with a roof like this and the solar panels, the roof will exceed the life of the solar panels. So basically all our projections are at 20 years for solar panels, and we'll look out 20 years and say, does this project, fund, and then anything you get over that is a bonus. So it's not really taken into account of the calculations, but it's still up there. They could be ballasted down, just weights snapped together. That way you don't have new penetrations in a brand new roof, which I know nobody wants to do.
That would be a
No
concern.
holes in the
on
roof.
this
Yeah.
one.
We'll usually work with the roof manufacturer, and we're required to do a structural analysis to make sure that it could support the additional weight of the solar, and also make sure that it's not going to put any existing warranties that you have. So usually I got a mat or something goes down, but you want to get that in writing from the manufacturer before you. So it's a little bit to be coordinated between, the roofing people and, the solar company, or the utility company, making sure that they're okay with the size of the system you're putting in. And then also, something that we talked about too is you want to size the solar system for the least amount of energy that the building can utilize. So you want to reduce all the energy use as much as possible in the building, and then size the solar generation system for that, so that you're not over generating. You want to be able to offset the full cost of what you generate the example they've given is, if you're paying for electricity at 15 cents a kilowatt hour. And you could use it from your solar system rather than buying it from the utility company, you save 15 cents. But if you generate more than you can use, the utility company says, well, we could generate it for 10 cents, so that's what we're gonna buy it at. You're only saving 10 cents if you're generating more than it's used.
Disincentive to have a larger array than what you need.
Yeah. More or less.
Yeah, well, you're not making much for that excess that you're not using.
Yeah.
And so I went to a solar town hall. It was more geared toward residential, but they said the same thing. Do your energy savings, your insulation, your caulking, your
All that
windows,
first.
do all that stuff first. And then figure out what kind of a system you need.
Based on that
Yes,
versus
which makes
bigger
sense.
bigger is not always better.
Right.
Oh, okay.
So this is an example. I don't want to talk all just about solar. It's a great opportunity with inflation reduction. I paid for some of this. So this is a project that we started up within the last few months. The jail, the parking lot in the back, had a roof about 10 years old, so it didn't make sense to put the solar there. They didn't really have the land, so that's covered carports with the solar on it. The courthouse administration got a brand new roof, so that got additional insulation as part of that. So that went into the calculations as well as the weight, the solar panels. So this is all up and running, and I
So
think
those are all solar panels on the right and along the carports in the back.
Yep, so there were four sites at Eaton County. So this was the jail, the courthouse. This way is a youth center that has ground mounted because they had a lot of land next to there. With some fencing around it, and then another carport at a medical center. So I don't know if you're familiar with the Eaton County. They got a campus out there with all tall buildings right in like the same area. But this was considered for unique sites. That's just another shot of that. That's not Eaton County, but it's just kind of what it would look like from there. So this is new. I don't think you guys have seen this. This went live a couple of days ago. This is Eaton County's dashboard that we helped them put together. Let me see if this link works. Guess listing it was still in the process of getting. What it shows at any given moment, the solar being generated from, here's the health center. There's the jail, courthouse, and this is all of them. So over on the right here, you can see some of the equivalencies. My Zoom thing is covering it, so I guess.
It's working.
So it's in real time, and then you could kind of filter by, okay, what's been done over the month, the year. And lifetime, I think, only goes back to November, December when it first came in line. But energy produced today. They got a technology department over there that's really digging into this, and they're pumping all the data and information you get. So this is a public dashboard. They have an internal dashboard where they could go and they could see down to each panel, like the amount of sunlight that they have seen, how it's doing, and that way,
Efficient.
if anything, comes unsnapped or whatever, they could immediately plug back in and make sure that they're getting all that generation. And we use this too to monitor. We're on the hook for generating that electricity.
Yeah,
Well, when did theirs go online?
Well, it kind of came in, there were 4 sites and they
Mhm.
kind of came in different phases.
Since when were all of them online?
Earth Day, isn't it? Didn't they do a thing for Earth Day?
Well, no, Earth Day they
That was
announced,
just
so April
announcement.
2022, and that's how quickly, these things could come to fruition. They signed the contract, so a couple of months prior to that, we did the development. It was a contract April 22, and then by April 22, the year 2022, so by April 22 this year, everything was up and running. It looks like most of the facilities didn't come on until maybe Marchish.
So just recently.
Yeah, very. recently.
Next, I'm gonna ask is we're looking at a year-over-year savings.
Oh,
Yeah,
gotcha.
that's what I'd like to see. But
Mhm.
it's
Oh,
kinda
yeah,
hard.
we've got other sites and references, but yeah, at Eaton County, yeah, we have a couple of months for the data.
Even a couple months can be beneficial.
Yeah, it's meeting all the expectations for anticipated production. So it's right at my.
Production is one thing, the cost savings, so is.
Right.
To see too.
I did get to talk with John Fuentes, who was the county administrator in Eaton at the time that this project began and probably started installation. I know he's in Clinton County now. But talked about what a great company to work with and you specifically, John. So
Thank you.
we're thrilled in that with that reference.
I know I mentioned Eaton County a lot, but that's because that's my baby. I get very invested and it's really cool to see the process.
This is neat. My science project would have been a lot more robust as a child if I had data like this available to me. Can you
Yeah,
imagine?
when we do projects like this at schools, we make it part of the curriculum. So we'll put together like a training program and let's have it around the class where they could log in and see the stuff. And then on the HVAC side, we'll have it, you know, but like little like training areas. Okay, this is all stuff installed in buildings, and then kind of use spare parts for the people that tinker with it.
Mhm.
Um,
Neat.
A little bit self-serving because nobody's training text anymore, and we need those.
That's the problem.
No one else is gonna do it.
So different funding options. The way this would work is when we would have workshops as we get into it is. You don't pay anything, so we develop the project, any development costs from the project. You have a project that's installed. Let's say it's a $6 million project. And then you have, some amount of money borrowed for that, and then you make the payments for it. So it's okay, it's $6 million, whether it's a taxes and police purchase or a bond or whatever funds, and then you make the payments out of that. So I get another example. I think you're talking about Eaton County, but Eaton County hasn't made a payment against this yet because it wasn't scheduled to be done. Full construction to December, so that's when the first payment will start. So, in that fiscal year, they'll be making their first payment and have that year's worth of saving.
Is the first one.
The amount. I don't know, because I know they didn't have to borrow the full amount. Half of that was paid out of school funds. Off the building.
That's what I was just gonna ask you
paid
is,
down.
yeah,
Yeah.
we've got to get these ARPA dollars spent, so it's okay to pay it on the front end, just don't borrow as much then.
Exactly right, yeah, because there's, and we have a group, our structured finance group that existed to help you find the cheapest amount of money you can find, because the lower interest rate you have, the more work you're getting done, so everybody kind of benefits from that.
Yeah.
And the taxes on police purchase is great. The ARPA funding went towards the mechanical controls of the building. And that freed up those dollars to be used for other things. The savings from that didn't have to go into that. They could be, done with other things that maybe don't have as much. But that's a pretty seamless process. Your bond counsel will get involved in that too, because we're not financial advisors, so we could just kind of give you the information. So we consult with them for, what's in your best interest.
And your preliminary analysis that you're working with Mr. Shoemaker on will help us understand if this is even feasible for us.
Yeah, so we'll get into. So the preliminary review, and there's really 3 stages. So it starts with a preliminary review, and then a project development, and then the contract. So we'll come to you 3 times at least or more, however involved you want to be. Be at every meeting without it if you like, but typically it's MOU, and it just says, hey, we're gonna very high level get a feel for what type of scope there is, which we've already had in conversations with Steve and looking through some documents and capital improvement plans. So we're pretty confident that it's gonna make sense to move forward. But we're gonna put that together, and my hope is this, if Tuesday that you sign, the following meeting, we'll have had 2 weeks to walk through the buildings and say, okay, hey, this is what your utility loading is, and benchmark it. With the prelim goals, say this is your square foot your facility is, this is what you're spending per square foot. This is where we'd expect energy efficiency building to be. So that 25%, instead of being somewhat arbitrary, will be drilled down a little more.
Mhm.
What you don't have is, okay, here's the exact scope that needs to be done, here's the exact cost, and here's the exact savings. It's okay, your facilities are benchmarked. Here's a lot of the needs, the ages and conditions of some of this equipment. And here's the scope items of facility improvement measures to be investigated. So the MOU doesn't provide you it's not a facility condition assessment. It's not like an inventory of all the equipment. It's a very high level. spent, a day or 2 days walking through the buildings just to get familiar with everything in the layout so that we could say, okay, these are the improvement measures that look like they make sense to be investigated. And then, next time we meet, we'll present the preliminary findings and then a project development agreement, which would go into the next phase.
Deep dive.
Right,
Deep
and that's where everything is fully detailed and scoped out, and then you would have at the end of the development phase. A firm fixed contract with guaranteed on the cost, which is. No change orders for any given scope, but once that contract signed and we start finalizing the sign and ordering equipment, if there's
Price
production,
set.
production delays or. As we saw through COVID, they would say something would be delivered in 20 weeks and delivered in 40 weeks and escalation of labor. They talk about inflation being 6 to 8% on equipment. A lot of the companies saw 20-30% increases. So that's where once that contract signed, you have guarantees of the cost, which is huge, and then also the guarantees of the savings of the different funding streams.
Guaranteed cost, guaranteed savings. And
I jumped around. So City of Marquette, this is just as an example project. That's a $27 million project that had 42 million in benefits. That was termed benefits rather than savings because a portion of that was replacing water meters for additional income to make them more accurate. They were measuring a lot of water that was going through there. Eaton County I've hit on a few times, so it's a 35% reduction in costs and the related environmental emissions. No added taxpayer costs between the energy, operational savings, and ARPA dollars.
Can you repeat that?
No additional taxpayer cost, which is, they have this is their document over on the right here, their press release.
And they've all seen a copy.
Yeah, no increase to the county budget. It hits on some of the scope that was in here. We got into just about every building, lighting, building controls, reducing energy and operational costs. Here's some other projects that we've done. We've done over 300 performance contracting projects in the last 5 years. 180 million in savings, funded capital improvements. I think this is. Do you know Dr. Costa over there?
saw the $49 million.
That's
I'm a
an
money guy,
eye-opener.
so that's what I
Yeah,
look
the
for.
superintendent there.
What was his name again?
Dr. Costa, she actually just left. Branch County, we've done this at about a dozen counties. I think these are just our recent ones. So this was an independent report from Frost and Sullivan. There's about a dozen companies that are active in Michigan. We're all accredited by NASCO. Performance contracting has been around for a very long time. It's the state of Michigan legislation. You'll see, I don't know if you have that one, you're ready to bring it up, but it references, hey, we're investigating potentially doing a project under MCL.
Yep.
That's the code. And that kind of dictates, how to the process.
I do want to take a minute to mention that our procurement policy does say that we can procure professional services through non-competitive means, right? Based on qualifications, based on reference, based on the work that they're doing. I'm not suggesting we take this out to the RFP, out to an RFP. We heard from right after COVID started, a company who wanted to do an energy audit for us. We ended up not choosing to take a deep dive with that company, if you recall, based on the references from other counties that I've just spent some time with at the conference, checking on certainly the Eaton County reference, knowing that I think that slide you just had was it like 40 or 45% of these in the state that Johnson Controls do, 46% of these in the state. So to me, that was worth pursuing an agreement with Johnson Controls. I didn't feel that an RFP would bring us any value, would bring us to any different decision than to go with JCI, honestly. He is the only one that's brought to me. So others have reached out, like the other company that came a couple of years ago, and in between, others have reached out. None of them have brought to the table the specific Inflation Reduction Act opportunities for us like John has. As he said, it takes a while to get to this table, right? Him and I have had a few meetings to this end, and I just can't see a bad side to it's a win-win-win. So,
The other thing I did want to mention about the Inflation Reduction Act is that legislators change and legislation could change. They can't cancel that.
oh, thank you for that. We
If
understand.
they're cost committed, then they're not gonna be able to do that, but they could, call back or sunset that program. So that's, and then for a lot of those dollars too, they've set aside a specific dollar amount and then once it's spent, so they say this program runs 6 years. And once the money's spent, it's gone. So that's why we're kind of pushing to develop the work as soon as we can, but we'll go at whatever speed you guys are comfortable.
So what's the timetable look like it for, can you give us a rough idea what timetable we're talking about?
Sure, and put in some tentative dates and
Mhm,
That's.
mhm. It's aggressive. Russell. Basically moving forward in our current fiscal year, which is and September 3rd. If we hadn't talked about.
yeah, it's due.
So it all falls this year.
To
First,
get
yes.
kicked off, payments, nothing would be due for until I would presume like the work was done and
Yeah, it
You know,
depends on the scope, but yeah, probably.
there might be an interest
That's
payment.
18. Yeah, and that's up to you whether you want to make interest during construction payments or construction or not, or how much you're borrowing if.
And that's entirely up to us.
Usually these projects are done because you're lacking funds and you have capital that you need to do. So those long-term savings are what's generated to pay for the bond over time. We find ourselves in a unique position where we actually have dollars to interject because of the ARPA direct dollars that we still have left that we've kind of been holding off for a couple million to do the HVAC on this building. We could just do the $2 million HVAC project and be done with it, or we could interject that 2 million into a scenario like this, add it with the energy savings. Now we've got more money to do the projects we need to get done. We've deferred maintenance around here for a little bit, right? I mean, the 50-year-old roof that we replaced last year tells us that. Yeah.
Wow.
It's interesting. And then with the Inflation Reduction Act, maybe even more savings to interject because of the payback on those solar projects, whether we do solar on this roof or on our new property. There's gonna be a payback at some point along that 20-year borrowing of those tax credits. Now, whether they come on the front end or a couple years later, they'll help us figure that out, and bond counsel and financial advisor will help us figure it out. But that's actually more dollars to put into the kitty, if you will, to do more projects. I think we need to take a look at it for sure, just to see, what can we do? Or we can do nothing and keep paying the bills that you'll see on the front sheet there, and right.
So that's all I had presentation wise. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
You'll be looking at also the LED lighting on the outside exterior.
Yeah, LED lighting just about everywhere I think we picked like the 6 or 7 major buildings. There's some little parks and stuff that we're thinking. But yeah, it's a lot of everywhere, you know, where the LED lights are down. There's out there, and you'll get a list of just every light bulb that has not been converted yet.
I know before I left Clinton County, I wore many, many hats, and one of them that Ryan talked me into is being the grant writer for the county. And there was a energy study done by C2AE. I think the county paid for that one. But it was done, and it was completed before the Obama shovel-ready projects. And we applied for a grant. And I think C2AE said some of these, if you make these improvements, it has a payback period of like 7 to 10 years. And I wrote 2 grants. One one of the very few counties that got a second grant, money's left over. And the improvements that were made, replacing the boilers, placing all the lighting with LED, also doing the sensors, to control the lighting in the building. We had an issue with the fact that central dispatch was located in the county building, operated 24/7, but the rest of the building shut down. So we separated that system, put it on its own HVAC system. And I don't know what the savings were, but it was forecast to be very substantial. And I don't think they had the opportunity to, for this type of program. But I know it's worth the look and the investment.
Especially when you got a 50-year-old HVAC system.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh. It's mind-boggling that it's still running. You know, and I say that, I'm glad it fixes everything.
How old are our boilers in this building? Are they original or have they been replaced over time?
I would think they'd had to have been
I
replaced
think
over
most of
time.
it was original.
Is it really?
Don't quote me on it, but I believe so. Yeah.
Well, I know they
Not the
have
engineer.
Don't build it like
engineers are
that
looking up.
anymore.
the boilers in the mezzanine at the top of this 4 or 5 story building were huge, 3 of them. And they were replaced by 3 small boilers that flared in sequence. And the idea was if shoulder season, you maybe had 1 small boiler, got colder, a second one, and if cold season, you maybe have all 3. 1 year after we did the project, the state came back and audited the project, and we went on the computer and found that most of the time, the building was heated by 1 of the small boilers, and only occasionally with the second boiler. Never the third boiler was required to kick in. So it's impressive that new
Technology.
technology that
Mhm.
moving rapidly forward. Gotta
Just
take
in my
advantage of it.
lifetime.
I know. I don't have any more questions, thankfully.
Nope, I don't either. Nope.
Well,
Good.
Thank you very much. sir.
Yeah, thank you.
John, thank you.
So, yeah, appreciate your time, everybody.
I will move that we consider approving the memorandum of understanding between Johnson Controls Incorporated and Isabella County for preliminary analysis of facilities, determine the viability of projects for a performance contract and authorize the board chair to sign the same. Support. It's been moved and supported. Treasurer Pickens, do you have any comments or usually have good insights on a lot of financial matters? I thought I'd check with you.
I apologize, I didn't hear much of the conversation. You're very soft spoken. I'm sorry.
I figured the microphone's
Yeah,
right here, so I didn't want to sound.
I would have to research and look at it.
Thanks. We've got time to do that.
Let's have this meeting this one. That's fine.
Well,
Research.
there's no cost to it and we'll get more information in the future
Yeah.
that will be more specific. So it's been moved and seconded to move this to our work session. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Pose same sign. It moves forward. Thank you. You're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting or we're just gonna go through our invoice discussion now, or you can leave.
I can stick around too. I'll take my seat with the public though. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So we have an invoice discussion. We've got 3 dates.
Hmm.
As I went through the only thing that caught my eye is the Michigan Tax Tribunal. That's on the 26th of May.
Yeah.
For Meyer. I was wondering what Meyer appealed for, but apparently he did and it got a reduction in taxes.
Yes, hang on. Treasurer Pickens, I don't know if you heard, Finance Chair Jelzinski's question. Meyer's on here for quite a large tax tribunal refund, just over $30,000. Did they go and argue lower value? Is that what that is? Okay.
So even the seemingly prosperous businesses are getting reductions now and maybe that's a new round of tax tribunal appeals. I don't know.
On the tribunal, we don't have a say so in it.
Right.
It was done through City of Mount Pleasant. City of Mount Pleasant. A lot of times they don't have.
Yeah.
Got a few drain projects and
Yeah. Clear
Pretty
County.
much.
Drain.
you have questions or comments?
I was just looking at the Little Tobacco assessment reimbursement for 206,000, and then the Mission Creek for 183,000 on the May 19th.
Mhm.
Wow. Okay. So these are one and done kind of payments? Is that correct? This isn't an ongoing thing, is it?
Well, it depends on the drain, right? I mean,
Okay.
there's a process, right? When a drain needs work,
You know,
people along that can petition. I believe there's a board of determination, by the drain commissioner that would basically, they make the determination, do the work or not?
Mhm.
Then once it's decided the work is done, then that's they're paying excavators to
Right.
do work. And that will continue until all the work that was determined needed done on that drain is done, and then it's either, I think that that maintenance work is assessed right away and that
Mhm.
comes back. But it's those larger projects that maybe will get assessed over a 20-year time frame.
oh,
So just kind of,
broken up.
yeah,
Okay.
that's determined ahead of time. I think the
Okay.
maintenance work though does not get, assessed over 20 years. It's a quicker deal,
Mhm.
so that's contentious, right, with some of your residents, because if there's a lot of maintenance work on a drain, that can really drive up your assessment in certain years. And obviously, the bigger projects can do so over a longer period of time. Now, recently, you saw a lot of payments for payments to banks from the drains, right? Those are more the one-time
It's what these. are.
interest.
Yeah.
Are these
High Point-
those?
High
Are they
Point.
to excavators?
Yeah, I got High Point Community Bank and then there's
Yeah.
Isabella Bank. So those are more of a one and done.
Yep,
Whereas the Clare County Drain Commission, that probably is more like a one and done too, correct?
that's probably more our portion.
portion.
I'm sure this was a much
Intercounty
larger
drain.
project and we only
Yeah.
have a very small
That's-
portion of
Mhm.
it.
That cost.
I think it's 30% and they're 70, I feel like.
Okay. Thank you for that
So-
explanation. Okay.
feel
Yeah.
like. Yeah, so depending on which vendor you're looking at, certainly our drains, our drains are a huge resource that takes a lot of funds to maintain and improve them.
We have a lot of drains.
Mhm.
Yes, we do.
And most of the assessment is charged back to the property owners that benefit, except
Mhm.
that the county does have a drain at large costs.
Great questions.
Commissioner Holt, do you have any?
Just an observation, but on the May 19th, on the Bay County Treasurer directly supervised care, that must mean secure
Yes, it
detention
does.
facility. Okay.
That's exactly it.
Any others? You wanna move?
I'll move these invoice list to our regular meeting.
I'll second that. All in favor signify by saying aye.
All right.
Aye. All the same sign, moves to our work session. Any announcements? I hope everybody had a very family-friendly holiday, Memorial Day.
Good weekend.
Nothing else? Do a final call to the public? Then we're adjourned. Thank you.
Okay.
And thank you again for the presentation.
One thing I did want to point out about that,